Hello and welcome everybody to Keep Hope Alive. It's another great day. And you know what? Today is Halloween. So trick or treat, have fun. Kids, go out there, have fun, get that candy, but make sure you let your parents check that candy. They're not trying to steal it from you or anything. They just got to make sure it's okay. We may take a couple pieces, but who cares anyways? We probably want Tootsie Rolls or Nerds or Smarties. So just keep that in mind as we check all your candy. Today, we have a special guest. Her name is Andrea Haas, and I'm so happy to have her here. For over 15 years, Alexandra Haas has been working in prevention directly with youth in school as a drug and alcohol peer educator, as a public school teacher, and writing curriculum for national prevention programs. She gained her Master of Public Health and Behavioral Science and Health Promotion since 2016 and has been working with nonprofits, including creating a curriculum for national substance use prevention programs that have served over 1.8 million students. That's amazing. Now, as a parent herself, she wanted to share this crucial tools, and she has learned to make it easy for parents to protect their children with a clear step-by-step formula backed by peer-reviewed research and behavioral health best practices. Now she's working to ensure the parents like you have access to this information and tools that you need to set your child up for a healthy life. So before we get started, I would like to thank our sponsor too, Life on Record. Life on Record is it's an interactive guest book. So when you do events and everything, they'll go in there. There may be a sign, a QR code that you can scan, or there is a vintage phone you can pick up and be like, ring, ring, ring. Hi, congratulations. I'm so happy for your marriage. Or happy birthday. It's a quinceañera. This is a great time. Or a bar bat mitzvah. Hey, congrats. This is a great time. You're growing up so fast, and we can't wait to watch you grow through all these years. They will get these messages that you leave on this phone, and they will burn it to a record, or they can put it in this little programmable box, which is really cool. It's a keepsake that you will have for the rest of your life, and you can always hear their voices. Plans only start at $99, and you get that phone number for 1 year, which is really cool. So go to www.lifeonrecord.com. Well, Alexandra Haas, here you are. I'm so happy to hear about your story and how you're helping all the kids out there, and you can help the parents too. So tell us about you and what where you're from and everything, and what got you started in this.
Sure. Well, I was born in New York, but I moved every 2 to 3 years growing up. Uh,
Okay.
so I was in a lot of different schools. And as a teen, I think like most teens, I made some poor choices when it comes
Mhm.
to alcohol and drugs. And so when I went in to get my undergraduate, I wanted to do psychology. I wanted to maybe be a psychologist and work with people who were struggling with substance abuse issues. I ended up being an alcohol and drug peer educator at the University of Texas, giving these huge programs for the undergraduates on what is blood alcohol concentration and what's the Bacchus maneuver and how can you stay safe now that you're here at college. We also had some classes for kids that got in trouble with the law at UT that we would lead. And so those would be kind of more intensive. They'd be in a room with us for like 2 hours, and we'd really go into detail on, what is a standard drink? We'd have them pour what they thought was a standard drink. We'd measure out how many shots that actually was. Usually it was like 4 or 5, and
Oh, wow.
really kind of talking about the mechanics of how that works and giving them some tools that could help them stay safe. So when I finished up college, I ended up actually going into teaching instead and working in the public schools with middle schoolers and also high schoolers. I taught science, and I always found a way to weave substance use prevention into the curriculum, especially with hearing the things my kids were saying. There were a lot of misconceptions about how things work, a lot of, kind of glorifying using drugs, things that they heard in songs, and me kind of being like, hey guys, but this is what it actually is. And so I wanted to have a wider impact on more than just my classroom. So I went back to school to get my master's in 2014 in public health and behavioral science and health promotion. And when I graduated, I started working with one of my professors there, and he actually heads up a program that is in schools nationwide that helps kids. It's actually a whole health program, but the part that I worked with him on was vaping prevention, because at the time, e-cigarette use amongst teens was skyrocketing. So he said, hey, we need a program for this. It's part of a randomized control trial. And so we actually developed this program and got it into schools. And we've been, going back to this program and updating it and creating offshoots of it for all substance misuse. And that's really what I've been doing since 2016. But about a couple years ago, I thought, I'm a parent myself, and I've learned so much about what really works to help kids avoid substance use. These programs that we had, in the surveys, it lowered the students' intentions to use by using these tenets of behavioral science that we know moved the needle. So I wanted to share this with parents and really give them all of those tools that they could use to really make an impact on their child and put it into an easy to use kind of product. Because I know for a lot of parents are busy. There is so much information out there, but I found that it was really hard to find everything that you needed in one place. There was pieces over here and pieces over here. And what we do really in public health, and especially behavioral science, is we take a look at an issue like substance use, and we look at what are all of the determinants of this behavior. What are the things that are going to influence this behavior? And we end up with a map of all these different risk factors that raise the likelihood that a child's going to use substances. And we also look at all the protective factors that lower the risk. And so looking at the research and all of these different factors that come together, I basically put it together into a program that parents can actually put those things into action and make it easy to immediately apply exactly what works with their child. And especially, and it goes so much beyond just talking to your kids about substance use, although that is, a main tenet, but there's so many other factors. So I put them all together. I wanted to make sure no stone was uncovered so that
Good,
parents
good.
could really, really make a big impact on their child.
That's good. Is this online too? I
It
know you
is.
said parents are busy. Yeah, it feels like we're always in a routine with kiddos, whether, they're going to school, we're dropping them off, then we go to work, and then it's like some sport activity, and then you're home late at night, eating, getting showers. Is your homework done? So, I mean, this is probably a good thing, like right going into the weekend, that they can sit down, dedicate like a day to say, let's talk this over, just so you know. So, excuse me, but when parents have to give the child the other talk, maybe this is the other talk they combine into one day. So, it's so online, you said, yes?
Yeah. So really the way that I made the biggest challenge for me before, I had this whole program together, but I am not a web developer. And I thought,
Mhm.
how do I build a platform that can hold this? So I did some research. I found a company that actually has the web platform for courses. And so I used
Nice.
that. I broke it down into videos, and the videos range from 4 minutes long. I think the longest one is 13 minutes, and it goes unit by unit, lesson by lesson. So this is actually something while you're sitting in the car waiting to pick up your kid, you can knock a video out right there. And I've got readings, I've got slides, but the videos really make it easy to you can just sit there and listen. You don't even really have to look at the video. I tried to really make it easy for parents, like on the go. Hey, I've got 10 minutes right now. I'm going to knock out one of these lessons. And it kind of goes through. The first unit is all about just understanding substance use. What are the risk factors, what are the protective factors, how many kids are actually using based on the 2022 surveys that just came out. They do these nationwide surveys every single year that.
And what is that? I am scared. What is?
Do you remember taking them? I remember taking them in school, and basically what it was, they're anonymous. It's the National Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance surveys, and they select a random sample of public schools, and they give the kids this survey that just measures, hey, like, have you ever used an e-cigarette? Have you used an e-cigarette in the last 30 days? Have you ever used prescription painkillers? Have you used alcohol? And I mean, it goes through all of the different substances that they know that are in use. The kids know it's anonymous, and they collect all this information, and it's invaluable, especially for people like me, to be able to look at this and see, where are we at in the trends and what are kids using?
Wow.
Like, for example, eighth grade use has increased 61% over the last couple of
Wow.
years. So we're seeing, we can really kind of watch in real time as the years go on. They've been doing this survey since, I want to say, the early 90s. It may have even been going on a little before that as well, because you can see a graph of what's actually been happening and trends in use. And so that's part of that first unit as well, is so parents can get an idea of, like, okay, how many kids are actually even using it? And for a good, kind of baseline, one of the numbers that I like to kind of think of is 69.4% of 12th graders, by the time they hit 12th grade, have tried a drug or alcohol. So that could be
Oh,
just alcohol, that could
wow.
just be a drug, that could be both, but that's a large percentage. Now, when you look at 30-day use, it's lower than that. And so we do make sure to remind kids. I think in a lot of kids' heads, they think so many more kids are using than they are. And so
Mhm.
on the parent side, it's important to know, okay, like, a large percentage, almost 70% of kids are trying drugs and alcohol. But also on the kids' side, hey guys, like, in the last 30 days, the numbers are much lower. Kids aren't actually using as consistently as they may think they are. And so that's important for kids to know, that the norms, it's not normal for kids to be drinking every single weekend. However, it's definitely happening. And the other thing that this survey measures that's really interesting is risk. So they actually ask the kids, hey, how risky do you think it is to use inhalants regularly? And 32% said, oh yeah, I think that's kind of risky. Something like 22%, I want to say, I think it was like 22.9% of eighth graders thought it was risky to occasionally use painkillers. I mean, the picture that we get from this is, the wide picture is that a lot of kids are trying. Most underestimate the risks, drastically underestimate the risks that are involved. And so this gives us a really, and they also measure how easy is it to access these substances. And it's really easy. We're getting,
Mhm.
like, I mean, I'm gonna want to pull up some of these just so you guys can hear them, but they measure, okay, like, hey, how easy is it to get alcohol? So like, by eighth grade, 47.9% said alcohol would be very easy to get. By 12th grade, 77% of students said, yeah, really easy. 78% of 12th graders said cannabis would be really easy to get. 17.2% reported cocaine would be very easy to get. 29% said amphetamines would be easy to get. And so these surveys are amazing. So that's really that first unit, is giving parents a up-to-date picture of what does substance use look like, what are the consequences that can come from it, and then it goes into, okay, what can we do? And I kind of broke it down into categories so that they can understand, what are the different aspects that we can touch on. And the first one is emotional regulation and coping skills, because when you look at the risk factors and the protective factors, a large percent of them go back to emotional regulation and coping skills. And so that first unit is all about what we can do specifically to help our kids have these skills, so that they aren't turning to drugs and alcohol as a way to cope with negative feelings, as a way to cope with stress. In that first unit, I talk about the reasons for use, and teens have been surveyed in multiple different research studies and asked, hey, like, why are you using? And it's not always, parents were so quick to think, oh, they want to fit in, and oh, they're bored. And yes, those things definitely, yeah, those are some reasons. But there's also a large percentage that are using as a way to cope with negative feelings, using as a way to unwind from stress and feeling overwhelmed. And so when we give our kids tools to do that in a healthy way, they're less likely to turn to drugs and alcohol as a way to self-medicate. And so that's that
Yeah.
first kind of piece, that first chunk. And so there's some lessons in there about how to support emotional regulation skills, problem solving, how to help kids pay attention to their thoughts so they can kind of reframe their thoughts, which is a basis for cognitive behavioral therapy, and also planning for triggers and what are different coping strategies I can use, when I'm feeling stressed, and really actively planning these things of like, hey, when do you feel negative emotions? What do you feel like is triggering that? All right, well, what could you do when you're feeling that way? And brainstorming with them and really coming up with an action plan to support them so that they know that when they're feeling really difficult emotions, that they've got a plan and they've got tools in their tool belt to handle those. Now, the second chapter is physical and mental health. So obviously, again, when we talk about reasons why kids use, mental health is a good percentage of the reasons, and kids are struggling. I mean, they really are. The
Yeah.
numbers are really sad. When you look at them, I'll go ahead and pull some of those up so that you guys can hear them. But in 2021, the survey said that 42% of high school students reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. 22% were seriously considering suicide. 57% of teen girls, when they broke it down by gender, teen girls, 57% felt persistently sad or hopeless in 2021, and 30% seriously considered suicide. That is a 60% increase over the
Wow.
last 10 years. So our kids are struggling. And so in this piece, I give some tools on how you can help your child, but also some resources of who you can talk to, because when your child is struggling, getting help is so important. And the earlier you're able to get them help, the better. And so I've got resources in there. And then also a piece that most people don't really think about is physical health, but there is some really amazing literature that's been put out that talks about how actual nutrition and hydration and physical activity can influence substance use behavior. There's been some really cool studies and, showing that poor diet is linked to problems with behavior and thinking and difficulty handling emotions. And they've done these studies where they're giving teen girls who reported depression symptoms and who ate a lot of foods that cause inflammation, like high processed foods, refined grains, and high sugar sweetened beverages. And they gave them a healthier diet. And over the period of 1 to 7 days, the inflammation went down. They reported that they felt better. And so it's kind of this really just kind of showing parents that there is this link. And it's not to be, the food Nazi of, okay, oh my God, you can't eat that. But also just giving parents simple tips of how they can make healthy options more available and how they can involve their
Yeah.
kids in doing that. And also hydration. This is a really interesting one, but even super low levels of dehydration influences a child's mood. And they've done specific studies about how dehydration affects substance use. And it's really interesting because when kids are dehydrated, it completely affects their mood and their judgment and their thinking. And it's just kind of these little amazing things. So that second unit is really all about physical and mental health. Like, okay, how does that play into substance use? How can I support that as a parent? And then, of course, after that, we go through physical, mental health, and then we go into the actual thing, academic and extracurricular support, because there is a huge link between extracurricular involvement and how kids are doing at school, how connected they feel to their school, and their risk for substance use. So again, there's tips that parents can use to really help their kids thrive in school, especially as a former teacher. There are things that they can do, specific things that they can do to support their child and make sure that they're doing their best in school. Things that can help them in extracurriculars, particularly volunteering is one of the best ones, but not when we force them to do it, when we actually involve them and say, hey,
Good.
like,
Yeah.
what are some needs? What would you like to do? When it's voluntary volunteering, the benefits are so amazing, from helping
Yeah.
them connected to their community, helping them gain a sense of identity and autonomy
Mm-hmm.
in their life. And then chapter 5 is all about parenting, which, let's be honest, when we talk about all the things that we can control, our parenting is the number one. And it's not, to demonize parents at all. It's just actually giving some really great research-backed tools to help parents increase their communication skills, to
Good.
help parents set expectations and use discipline, not punishment, but discipline, to help kids learn from their mistakes and learn from their behavior. And putting in a structure where kids know exactly what it is that you expect, exactly what happens, as a consequence if they don't meet these expectations, and doing that actually as a family, in a family meeting, everybody's on the same page, getting your kids' input, making them feel like they're actually involved in there. And yes, parents have the final say, but
Yeah.
we take our kids' input into account and they feel, okay, I'm a part of this. I'm really owning this.
Yeah.
Also, how to help parents stay calm. I'm a parent. None of us is perfect. Like, we've all yelled at our kids. We've all lost our
Yes.
kids. And so that's the piece too. Like, there are some really helpful tools that can help parents stay calm. And then we start to get really into very specifics with substance use. So supervising and monitoring, and how that plays a massive, massive role in substance use. And not so much overt, like monitoring. I know where you are, but it's so much more based on trust and how much your child is willing to disclose to you. Where are they? Who are they with? Are they going somewhere else? Are they going to let you know when that happens? And how to make
Yeah.
sure that that's going on. And then controlling access to substances. So many kids, their first use is at their own house or at a friend's house where they're taking substances from the house itself. And what can we do as far as keeping these substances out of reach, and being aware of the fact that, yeah, kids, if your liquor cabinet is not locked, I mean, it should be. It should be.
Yeah, it
Or
should be.
e-cigarettes are laying around. They
And
should
let an
be.
alarm go off and stuff like that.
Yeah, and just your kids know it, and just saying like, hey, like this, I'm gonna lock this up. I trust you, but these substance, just making it, take the temptation, keep the
Yeah.
pills out of the bathroom, make sure that the things that you have in your house and the houses that they frequent are not easily accessed. And then the final kind of piece is communicating about drugs and alcohol, and like, how
Yeah.
do we do this? There's so many myths surrounding this, but it's one of the most important things that we can do as a parent is controlling our own attitudes towards it and being crystal clear about what it is that we expect, but not just like, hey, I expect you to never do this, period, the end. Giving the
Yeah.
reason behind, hey, this is why this is important. Like, your brain is developing until you're 25. Introducing substances during brain development has lasting consequences. That's why I've got this expectation for you. It's not because I want to rain on your parade. It's not because I want to stop you from having
Yeah.
fun. It's because I care about your mental and your physical health, and how we can actually inform them about what's going on and how to structure that conversation. So I've got scripts, I've got step by step. And it's so much less about telling kids the right things than it is about presenting some information and actually kind of eliciting their thoughts and getting them to come to the conclusion of, oh, I don't know that I want to do that. That's the most effective thing that we can do. And so
Yeah.
you mentioned like the other big talk, sitting down, we'd make it one day, but these are talks that should be ongoing and regular. Like, you should be having these types of talks, talking about substance use every time you see it depicted in a movie, or hey, a billboard, or the news, or when you're driving the car. Just continuing. There's so many points that they need to know, and so I give parents all the key talking points of things that teens really need to know. Like, for
Yeah.
example, with the prescription painkillers, them not thinking it's risky, but now they found a DEA, when they seized these black market pills that are out there. They're making pills that look almost identical to the real thing. And the DEA tested these, and 6 out of 10 of them tested positive for fentanyl. So when a kid thinks,
Oh my.
like, my friend gave me a Vicodin for a headache. There was a girl, I think it was in California, who took a painkiller from her friend thinking it was a prescription painkiller, which is harmful enough on its own, but it ended up having fentanyl in it. It was a black market fake, and she died. It's so the fact that our kids, so
Wow.
few of them know that that's going on. A lot of parents don't even really know that that's going on, but it's so, so common. And this is something like, when we were teens, that was not really a thing. We didn't have these fake Xanax bars on the market. We didn't have these fake Vicodins, these fake pills that are actually containing, a lot of them, fentanyl, which it only takes a tiny, tiny, tiny amount to cause an overdose, because it's 50 times more powerful than morphine, or 50 times more powerful than heroin. I think it's 100 times more powerful than morphine. So there's so many of these little pieces. And so we don't dump them all on our kids in one conversation. It's more of like, hey, I heard this. What have you heard about that? What do you think about that? Like, how would your life be different if, one of your friends was into that? Or how, and how to structure these conversations to really
Yeah.
get your kid talking. It's a collaborative conversation. You want them to be doing most of the talking, not you. It's not
Yeah.
this kind of lecture situation where you're just dumping information on them and this is what it is. It's really just kind of presenting these facts and letting them kind of sink in and letting them think about it and doing it in a way of letting them know like, hey, I trust you and I'm sharing this information for your safety, but also because guess what? Like your friends, if you decide you're not going to be drinking, well, your friends might. And what
Yeah.
happens when one of them passes out? In most of overdoses and toxicity situations for young people, there were other people present. There was other teens there, but nobody called 911. It's completely preventable, but nobody noticed the signs. They don't know what to look for. They think, oh, they passed out. Haha, that's funny. They don't realize if you're drinking and you pass out, you need to call 911. Like
Yeah.
right, that's alcohol
Yeah.
poisoning. That can be fatal. And so really setting your kid up to be the one that can protect their friends. And ideally, they're getting this information as well, but with a viewpoint of not, hey, I think you're going to do this. Well, the viewpoint is, I know you're smart. I know you can make healthy choices. I want to make sure that you have the information you need to keep your friends safe.
Yeah. Yeah. That is very true. I'm not going to go too much into my kiddo, like at his age. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I want to know how they're getting it through their backpacks into school and going to the bathroom. Hey, you want to try this? And I was like, wow, it already starts at this age. And I was proud to hear my son go, no, that's not right. And
Mm,
that made me feel good, like very happy that he was able to push it away. But I have to give kudos to the coach on the football team because he stresses to all the boys, drugs are bad. If you're going to vape, that's bad. You will be thrown off the team. This
mm,
is a career choice. I am prepping you to move on in the future. And I think with that mentorship and coaching,
mm,
he's done the right thing. I mean, it's really embedded for these kids who want to progress and be a sports player too and do well. And like for my kiddo, I'm like, your grades are important too,
mm.
because if they slip down, I'll notice. And I think, I was very blessed to have a son who he wants to become a minute. He tells me he's only 11. He knows his map career. He's like, I want to be a pro football player. And when I retire, I want to be a children's minister. And I'm
Aw.
like, okay. So, like, for me, that's good. And I know when I present this, to him and teach him about it, it's going to be easier for him to see why not to do it and how he can help others and prevent it from happening. So,
Okay.
but I'm definitely going to look at your stuff because, I think everybody needs the coaching too. We need to hear how to word this correctly to kids because it's peer pressure at school too. Oh, you're a big baby. You're not going to try this, or whatever they're doing now.
Mm,
So, um, but with vaping, that scares me too because you got regular cigarettes and then you got your vaping. I mean, what are they bringing in more? The real, cigarettes or
it's the vapes. By far and large, teens and young people are using the electronic cigarettes more than cigarettes. Cigarette use has actually fallen, significantly since the 90s. It's still being used, but by and large, it's these vapes. And there are so many misconceptions that they have about what those even are. But one of my favorite facts to share with young people about the e-cigarettes, they did a study and they found that 52% of teens who use e-cigarettes want to quit. They hate it.
well,
They hate it. And they're addicted and they can't. And so it's so funny because, these kids are thinking, oh, all the kids are doing it. I want to do it. But I have some quotes here from that study. And they said things like, I want my lungs back. I can't breathe. My
yeah.
lungs are weak. I hate juuling. It's taking over my life. Juuls aren't really around anymore, but for a minute, those were the most popular ones. And now it's kind of these disposable ones that they're using. I want to quit because I feel the lump impact on my lungs. I lost my varsity sport because my lungs are too effed. too much money. I hate being
Hmm.
dependent on it. So it's kind of this idea of like, oh yeah, everybody who's using it really like wants to use it, but that is completely false. Over half of the teens that are using these, they don't want to do it anymore, but they're addicted. These the e-cigarettes are absolutely the most common, and the problem is they can contain more nicotine than a pack of cigarettes.
I never knew that. Wow.
And in that one device, and but kids aren't really thinking about it like that, and it depends on how long you inhale, and when you're hitting it, it depends on how high the voltage is for the battery of how much nicotine is coming. It depends on the concentration of the nicotine liquid, and a lot of times those labels have been found to be incorrect, and it depends on how many times you're hitting it. So a lot of times they're hitting it and hitting it and hitting it, and they're getting so much more nicotine from that than they would if they necessarily smoked actual cigarettes sometimes, depending on how they're using it. But they're not thinking about it as, hey, like I'm using a highly addictive drug. They're thinking, oh, okay, these flavors are fun. Like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's just water vapor, when it's not. It's an aerosol of all these weird chemicals like propylene glycol, and those flavors.
Wow.
Flavor Extract Manufacturer Association. It's FEMA, but not that FEMA. It's a different FEMA.
Oh, I was like,
I don't know,
okay.
like, but
Yeah.
they actually released a statement, and they were like, hey, these flavors that we're making, we make them for food. That's why we made the flavors. They're tested for the digestive system. We never intended these to be used in the lungs. These are not tested to be used in the lungs. And yet the kids are like, ooh, a new flavor like this, that the flavors are really what's enticing a lot of them. And so there is legislation going on, they're trying to get rid of the flavors, but there's always a loophole, and these
Yeah.
cigarette companies are smart, and they're finding these loopholes and finding ways to get around it. But I think that's a lot of what's bringing it in, is this myth that it's not that harmful, but another thing to think about is like, oh, you're a guinea pig. It took us 50 years to collect all of the data and research that was needed to prove that cigarettes cause all the health problems that they cause. These haven't been around for 50 years. The data is still coming in. And so it's a big question mark of what are the long-term effects of inhaling these things into the lungs. And one of the things they found is from the heating coil specifically, there are heavy metals like nickel and mercury and tin that are these
Oh
tiny,
my
tiny bits
goodness.
that are being inhaled, and they lodge deep in the lungs. And so doctors are starting to say, hey, we think some of these lung effects from the vapes are irreversible. They can't, and again, it's conclusive evidence. We're going to see it probably in another 25 years. It takes a long
Wow.
time to gather the evidence and to look at what's going on. But the early signs are, you got to stay away from this. And not only the questionable ingredients and what's going
Hmm.
on there, but the nicotine and how addictive it is and how it physically changes the brain when you use it during brain development.
Oh
So
my goodness.
there's so much that the kids, they're thinking, oh, this is, it's no big deal, but they really don't know. And that's why, the program that I work on and that I write curriculum for has been so impactful. I think that's why so many people who have taken it are like, oh, we actually asked them like, hey, what are your intentions of using e-cigarettes? Do you think you're going to use this? And after taking the program, the intentions fall. They're like, whoa, hold on, because they're getting this information. They're getting an actual picture of, oh, like, what is this? And
Hmm.
maybe I don't want this. And also getting refusal skills. That's a part of my program as well, where it's like, hey, your kid needs to have a response on deck, because when they're in a social situation, even if nobody's overtly pressuring them, like, hey, try it, try it. I mean, not saying that doesn't happen, but what's more common is a kid is in a social situation. The people that he's friends with or wants to be friends with are using it, and they don't want to feel left out. So they kind of feel this pressure of, oh, like, I want to be part of the group. And so talking to your kid about, hey, what are these situations that you could be in? What do you think you'd say? And practicing what they'd say so that these responses are on deck, so that in
Hmm.
the moment they're not like, oh, gee, what do I do? And I always
Yeah.
feel like my favorite one is blame your parents or blame sports or blame, I mean, there's so many different things that
Yeah.
up with, but they need to kind of have that in their mind so that when they're in the situation, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, oh, coach, are you kidding me? My focus is football. I'm not messing with that, and
Yeah.
being able to blame it on whatever they, rather than just saying, I mean, the strongest kids can be like, no, that's dumb, but not all the kids, not every kid is going to feel, that.
Yeah.
And And a lot of the surveys of teens that they do, they say, oh, the kids that are really popular and accepted, they can say no to drinking and they can say no to these things and no one thinks anything of it. But for the kids that aren't so sure of themselves, these are the ones that are like, yeah, okay, I'll do it, because they want to fit in. And so again, having those
Yeah.
like, what can I say? What am I going to do if I'm in this situation? Thinking through it so that when they're in that situation, they are ready, they have an action plan, and they know exactly what they're going to say so that they can get out of it and still save face.
So, like, I know for smoking, they made the nicotine patch for adults, right? I
Mhm.
mean, with kids, if they're vaping and they know they want to stop, you know,
Mm.
but, they say, hey, I'm just used to putting something in my mouth and taking it
Yeah.
in, out. Is there anything I can do that would help me, get out of that cycle? But it's just the thing of going back and forth. So,
I think really what it comes down to is if your child's at the point where they have been using this product and they are addicted, you got to talk to your healthcare provider. You got to talk to the pediatrician. You got to talk to the school nurse if you don't, if you don't have
yeah.
a pediatrician, ideally you do, but they need to talk to a medical professional. And there are actually a lot of really good programs, like I want to say, I think Truth Initiative has they have a hotline, and you can text ditch vape, so all one word, DITCHVAPE, to 88709, and it's a new e-cigarette quit program that is all text based, that kids can text and they can get research based methods to help them do that. And so there's
Okay.
that one, there's SAMHSA's got another one. And so there are hotlines, there are text programs, but again, like when you're addicted, you're not going to find, nicotine gum and patches for kids.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's a no, I don't know that any pediatrician is going to recommend that, but yeah, I mean, they've got themselves into a bad situation when it comes to getting addicted to nicotine, but they need help. If they're at the point where
Yeah.
they are fully addictive, they need support from you. They need support from a healthcare provider. And in addition, there's all these resources online as well that they can get support from, like the text program, to
Hmm.
help them address the situation.
Now, I don't know if this is considered in the same, well, I think it's category, but the edibles, kids are
Yeah,
trying those as well.
yeah.
I know, living with chronic pain for a very long time, that I tried it, but somebody said, oh, well, you just take half the bar. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, half of the bar, but it was supposed to be this tiny little piece, but it sent me into seizure after seizure after seizure. And I was like, I did see the white light and I told God I wasn't ready and I wanted to stay here for my kids. But those things, if you don't know, how to take it, or don't do it, don't ever do it. I'm going to say, don't even try it. It is scarier than I ever believed, but I didn't
Yeah.
know better, I guess, and
Yeah, I
it's,
mean, that's not your fault, though, right? I mean,
I
someone
know
gets
it's not my fault.
it happened. It's funny you mentioned that, because I mean, while I'm not going to sit here and say it never helps anybody, I mean, there are people who say
Yeah.
their pain has been helped by cannabis. However, the cannabis of
Yeah.
today is so much more potent than it was in the 80s, let's say. So they measured in 2012, and the average is 12% THC content from 2012 versus 3% in the 80s. And it's funny that you say it, because actually in older adults, emergency room visits for cannabis increased 1,804% from 2005 to 2019.
Huh.
And a lot
Imagine
of people,
that.
yeah, and a lot of people are unaware of the potentially adverse effects, and with children in particular, they look like candies. So from 2017 to
And that's
2021,
dangerous.
yep, there was a 1,375% increase in calls to the National Poison Control Centers, because I mean, and 22% of those cases for the kids ended up in hospital admissions.
Yeah.
573 of them ended up in critical care. And so it's kind of, we have this perception of like, oh, it's just a plan, it's fine. But the edibles are so strong. And a lot of times people don't realize, when you take them, It takes a few hours to kick in, and it can last 12 to 24 hours. You can still be feeling these effects from these edibles. The very next day, you're still feeling some of the effects, and it can affect your driving. It can affect your mood. It can affect your sleep. And, there's so many reasons why kids shouldn't be taking them, particularly the brain development piece. There's a lot of information on structural changes in the brain when
Yeah.
you produce cannabis in a developing brain. And there's also, for me, I found some information that I thought was really kind of shocking. And some of that was that, I mean, the biggest issue is these vape pens, with some of the things that can be in them. So they did these big tests, and they kind of rounded up a bunch of the vape pens in New York, and they found that 40% of the products that were sold by unlicensed vendors contained harmful contaminants like E. coli, salmonella, pesticides, heavy metals, and many had an accurate labeling of their THC content. And they actually, I mean, we're seeing that like across the legal states. In Nevada. I think it was last year, but they found that they had products that contains an unapproved pesticide. And
Oh,
the labs didn't detect it because it wasn't on the list of what to test for. In Oregon as well, there was one, they they found that these were legally operating stores, and they contained piperonyl butoxide and pyrethrin, which are pesticides. And the problem is that the labs that originally took the samples passed them, even though they contained these harmful pesticides. And so those were recalled. But before they were recalled, 812 cartridges were sold. And so I mean, even when it's legal, I mean, this isn't, it's kind of, oh, it's a plant, but okay. When you have to do something to it, I mean, you're using harsh solvents to extract the THC,
yeah.
and you're adding in potentially unknown factors like these pesticides. And I'm not saying every company does that at all, but what I am saying is that even in the legally operating field, and especially in the unlicensed field, there's a lot of question marks about what's actually in that, and the fact,
Yeah.
like you said, that it's so much stronger than I think a lot of older adults realize, because it has gotten so much stronger since the 80s, since the
Yeah.
70s, even since the early 90s. It's continuing to get stronger and stronger. I know one product that I saw contained 23% THC, which is double. I mean,
Whoa.
12% was the average in 2012. I mean, they're really, really strong. And, the kids are doing dabs, which is if they create kind of like a
Yeah.
wax from the trichomes, the hairs on the plant that have a whole lot of THC in them. And they're putting them on vaping coils and inhaling it. And it's giving this massive dose of THC. And again, it's kind of like, there's this, okay, like, it's natural, it's a plant, but like, how natural is that? You especially need to be careful with the concentrated products, because when there are contaminants and you concentrate the product, those contaminants are
Oh,
concentrated as
yeah.
well. And there's there's just so many reasons so many reasons to be unsure about that. And also driving, a lot of kids think, oh, okay, like I can smoke, or I can eat an edible and I can drive. But it is, I mean, for one, like all the legal states have these billboards that say, hey, PS, you can't drive high. I mean, that's, you're under the influence. But a
Yeah.
lot of kids think, oh, I can do it. Like it's fine. And it's really common for
They
teens to
can't.
report. Oh, but they're already, I mean, teens are already at a higher risk for crashes because they're inexperienced, because of distractions. And when you add in substances, it increases. And the fact that most teens think, hey, I can smoke and drive, no big deal. But it slows your reaction time. It's going to raise your risk for accidents. And so there's so many misconceptions around it. And I'm not saying like, hey, like, we need to look, if medical cannabis works for you, that's awesome. But should any children be using it other than perhaps the very tiny percentage who have epilepsy and it helps them? No, no, no.
Hey, I think I said in my last podcast, I grew up with epilepsy and I have complex and partial seizures. Will I ever do cannabis? No, I am scared of it, like completely. Has it been brought to my attention? Yeah, but my answer is still no. I
Yeah,
think I'd rather just go through the seizure and depend on the medicines that my doctor gives me.
yeah,
Over the years, it has like created sleep problems, but I get that. They're trying their best with one pill. And, I gotta say, it's hard when you do have chronic pain too, because you have the epilepsy and that causes, the pain reactors. They tell me, I guess it's a brain signal to go
Yeah.
throughout. I talked to a happiness coach. He was on one of my podcasts, and I tried going with his scenario. Be happy all the time and it helps, and
Not
laughter.
healthy.
Yeah, I
We
know,
say
I
this
know.
all the
I'm
time.
trying here. I was thinking about something he said. It's like pulling the ribbons out of somebody, or like a bunch of little hanky, different color. Pretend that's all your pain coming out. I do. I'm trying to be positive here, but it's not really helping. He's a great guy, but there's a lot of people that will go through this. And I wish and pray that there was more medical research on new medications that could act like the cannabis, but
Yeah.
it's not dangerous to the body. So, here, if we can create this COVID vaccine, kind of help everybody, because there's been a scenario where they took away painkillers for a
Hmm.
lot of people that need them,
Oh
because
yeah.
other people were just taking them and dying. I hate to say that, but like they abused that pill. But us who are in pain, we're paying the price for that action. So,
Absolutely. I've got family members in Texas that were prescribed pain pills. They developed dependence because that's what happens when you take them every single day. And then you're right, with the new regulations, all of a sudden, oops, we can't give them to you. And these people are going through withdrawals. And it never should have been this situation. There are a lot of really cool experimental, therapies being developed. And again, cannabis under the supervision of a doctor, where they're giving you something that, is for sure pesticide free, and it's got the right
yeah,
percentage, and right. I mean, hey, like I said, that can work for a lot of people. But when you're in a state like Texas, yeah, we don't see that happening anytime in the near future.
no, we don't.
Just relying on like, hey, I'm gonna just take the thing that is probably coming in from another state. I don't really know what's in it. It's there's a difference between taking it, from a medical professional of a strain that was developed for that specific thing, and just taking it and kind of hoping for the best. And it is frustrating that there's not more
Yeah,
options for people. And it is frustrating. I mean, even with the ADHD medication lately, a lot of people are struggling to get it because they're trying to crack down on the people that are misusing them. But there are people who are on this medication that really need it, and it really helps them, and it's becoming difficult. And it's kind of this criminalization, idea of like, okay, well, if we just crack down, and then it's gonna stop the problem. But I think we know that has never worked. The war on drugs has failed. All
yeah,
it's done is incarcerate a lot of people, but they're not getting the medical help that they need. We've got to stop looking at it as a criminal issue and look at it as a public health issue, you
yeah,
know, and
definitely.
I wish there were more solutions, for people like you that are struggling. And I know it really, it does vary so much state by
Austin, here
state.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the Chronic Pain Foundation too, and I know they wanted us to go out there, but this was many years ago. So, that's one of the things that I would like to bring awareness to eventually, and have some guest speakers for that too, because it takes a lot. When you hear you can't get something that's actually going to help you live day by day, it's very wary and tired. It's like, do I move to Oklahoma? Do I move to Denver or wherever, Colorado, just to get this help? And I hate the cold. I don't like tornadoes that much either. So
Yeah.
I'm
Very.
stuck in Texas. No kidding. But yeah, so I mean, it's just really hard. There is another question, because I think there has been a bigger pool also for adults, not kids, of course, and maybe about this. But I hear these horror stories of people getting roofied at bars.
Mm.
And I don't know if you heard of stuff, people getting this done, but it's sad
It's
because
very common. It's very common. I mean, I hate to say it, but in college, we always kind of told people, don't accept a drink from someone that if you didn't watch it being made, don't
yeah,
accept it. if you didn't, if you don't know that, I mean, if you have a drink and you want to open it yourself and keep your hand over it, don't put it down and walk away. I mean, all these precautions, and it used to be like, oh, just girls need to look out for this, but it happens to guys too. And a
Yeah.
lot of times they're targeting people for sexual assault, or they're targeting them for theft. I know in Austin, it's been happening, a lot to guys. They've been finding these guys in the, in the water down there by the park. And it's like, they're like,
Water.
they've drowned, but they had drugs in their system. And a lot of times it's GHB, which is colorless, it's odorless. Also, Rohypnol or roofies, that's, kind of where that comes from. There's a lot of different things that you can put into someone's drink, and it's almost imperceptible. I mean, it can happen so fast. And if it's a dark colored drink, especially, like I know some of the medications, like they actually have a little color changing thing so that you can see, but it's only if your drink is light colored that you would even be able to notice that. And
What
so
is that? Because I thought it was the nail polish company and they stopped. They're out of business.
nail polish. I don't, so I mean, Rohypnol specifically, I mean, that they switched from a white tablet to a green tablet with a blue core in 1997 that will dye a light colored drink, but it's actually not approved for medical use in the United States. So any Rohypnol that's coming in is usually coming in from another country. And so that one is not even something that you can get, but the GHB is another one. And that's the one that has no taste, no smell. It looks like water. And I'm trying to remember, but it's a depressant, and it's used to treat narcolepsy. So it does have real medical use, but obviously, that's not what it's being used for. And it's so easy to slip it into a drink. And the effects begin about 15 minutes after it's in the drink. And then of course, if you're putting it in alcohol, it compounds it. I remember going to a party with my friend, freshman year of college. We were at a fraternity party, and we both had a cup of this trash can punch, like dumb as it was, how stupid were we? Who knows what was in that? But I had the cup, and I was feeling fine. She had the exact same, what we thought was the same thing, one drink. She ended up face down in her vomit, woke up in her dorm room, no idea what had happened. She only had one drink. She was drugged. And so they were just, I guess, putting it in random drinks. Who knows? Like the person who gave it to her, we really don't know, but it's not uncommon. I have a lot of friends who have been drugged at bars, a lot of friends who have been drugged at parties. And it's so much like, you just got to be so careful.
Yeah, and I heard even with the sugar, they can slip it into the sugar. So if you have drinks and stuff like that, and you're supposed to lick that, take the shot,
Yes.
yeah. So I did hear
Exactly.
that. I'm hearing more stories of that for adults, when they
Yeah.
go out, which that's very scary. So be on the lookout for that. Never trust anybody. I mean, if you have a really good friend, then you can, but definitely just don't ever leave a drink.
Only leave a drink, watch it. Don't accept a drink from like the stranger that's like, hey, I bought you that. I mean, personally, I don't drink at all. It's just not something that serves me at this point in my life. It's not something I enjoy. So yeah, like it's easy for me to avoid, but it was definitely a time in my life where I, would be at the bar, and my friend and I would, oh, hey, we bought you shots. And we'd be like, oh, okay, we
No,
the
okay.
bathroom. And we would just leave because, I mean, we knew, we're like, okay, like if we take this, there's a good chance that there's something in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Random person.
definitely.
And not to say, I hate the whole like, oh, like live in fear. I don't want people to live in fear, but
Yeah,
there's a difference between living in fear and being aware and making smart choices for yourself. And yes, it absolutely happens to adults. And a lot of times for adult, and like I said, even men
yeah,
can happen to you, and they're targeting them for theft, and they'll drug them, they'll take their phone, they'll take their money, and that's it. And it's so scary because
it
you
is.
are just completely incapacitated
Yeah,
and totally unaware. It's like, it's a really, really sad thing that people would even do that. And yet,
I know it is. But I know back to the children part of it. I think I went random and started talking because it goes both way. Kids, adults, some of us adults, we're stuck with it too. Like if they ever were addicted to something. So definitely, if you want to break away from that, get the help that you need. If anything ever, like here in Texas, they have, if it ever came close to wanting to hurt yourself, there is a number you can call, 988,
Yeah.
And they're biased. They're going to talk to you no matter what and help you the best way they can. So, but going to get the help that you would need and coming to terms with it as an adult, that's you don't want your kids to ever see you growing up in that pattern. So it's just we need to help our younger generation come to terms. What is the right path? How can you say no to somebody when they're asking and saying, oh, dude, because you're not trying it, you're just a wussy or whatever they say, you don't need that peer pressure as a kid. So that is important to learn as well. But if there is depression in our young kids and they're just sad, go to the counselor, talk to the counselor at your school, just let them know what's going on. Because here in schools, I think it's gotten a lot worse, but bullying has really,
Kids
I,
are kids are so brutal.
I know.
It is. I like that you're bringing up the hotlines again. I've got a few that are really helpful. Like the National Alliance on Mental Illness has a helpline for kids and parents. Like you said, parents, if you're
Yeah.
struggling, like you are not alone. There is a helpline at 1-800-950-6264. You can also text helpline, all one word, to 62640. As you said, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is
Yeah.
reaching by dialing or texting 988. And SAMHSA as well has a national hotline at
Good.
1-800-662-HELP. That's 4357. So there's a lot of resources, but I mean, our communities are underserved.
Yeah.
There are so many more people who are struggling with mental health than who have access to mental health care, and it's expensive. It can be really expensive. So these hotlines are a great place to start if you're looking for help. And like you said, the school counselor, the school nurses. I know at the schools that my daughter attended in Texas, there was something called Communities in Schools. That was wonderful. It had caseworkers in the school that would work with the family and the kids. You could get
Yeah.
referrals to a psychologist right there on campus. So
Nice.
you gotta, but exactly like you said, you gotta reach out and you gotta try to get some help.
Well,
Because
yeah, I know. I guess it was before school started, they said, do you want your kid to take this survey? And I guess I hit yes. My son came home. I did a survey and it asked me, do I have any intentions of harming myself? And I go, well, what you put? And he's like, no, I don't. And I go, okay, well, just be honest on any survey. And he goes, well, we don't know. They don't know who we are. We get to turn it in and everything and kind of say what we want to say. And I go, but that's a good thing because you're helping them with numbers, is what I told him. I go, and that's really what they need to see. So that
yeah,
is
sounds like
important.
his school was one of the ones that was selected for.
Yeah, I know when you said that earlier, I was thinking of what he said to me yesterday, and I was like, okay, but I'm okay with things like that. If they're going to be teaching our kids at the schools and have an outline program, that is amazing because the more awareness the teachers have, I mean, kudos to teachers. Now they are
Yeah.
so protective mode with the things that are happening in the world. They're getting trained, I hate to bring up if there was a shooter, but they're trained on that. And it's scary, but now they have to do more training to help prevent kids, not do anything. I
Yeah.
just would hope that teachers, if they saw something wrong, like a kid not behaving as
Yeah.
quite as normal or eyes are just kind of they'll send them to the nurse to get checked and then maybe a counselor could talk to them at the schools but not be judgmental or overlook problems like that. That would be
I mean, it's really rare in the case of, when the shooter is a student that there were no warning signs. What we find time and time again is reports from teachers and reports from counselors of what's going on. And, at some point, accountability, what happened. But I
yeah.
mean, teaching is the hardest job there is. I mean, you're a parent, you're a teacher, you're a nurse, you're a mental health. I mean, we can't, there's so many factors that need to come together. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they are, kudos to teachers indeed, because they are out here really, I mean, on the front lines with our kids and they're seeing what's going on in the community and they are
Yeah.
doing best, because Lord knows that is a difficult job and it is incredibly underpaid.
Yes, it is underpaid and they should be making more money. Like you definitely like, I mean, they're going through so much and then, law enforcement, they probably have new lessons all too they have to learn because this world is constantly changing. But for me, I stay away from any news on TV unless it's urgent, urgent. And I was like, I tell my mom all the time, if it was urgent, it would be on Facebook, like every post. I'm not going to sit here and watch the news for that long because it just feels like negative energy. And I don't want to take any of that in. It's all, I just want to be happy every day, be able to do my things and everything.
I
But
understand that there is a
yeah,
certain point where, I mean, we're exposed to more information today than we ever have in human history.
I
And
know.
it can be really damaging to your mental health. So recognizing that the inundation of all the bad news is affecting you and
Oh, yeah.
choosing, you know what, I'm going to filter a lot of this out. I'm going to pay attention, to what's going on, but I'm not going to doom scroll
Yeah.
and listen to the. So I understand that. I understand that completely. I think a lot of people feel the way
Yeah.
you do, that it's not necessarily sticking your head in the sand so much as protecting your mental space and not overindulging yourself in all these negative things that are going on a daily basis. And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of good news being shared a lot of times.
No,
That
there's
doesn't.
not really. I mean, because, I think one of the funniest moments, as I talked to you before, I had another speaker, but, we've been waiting all our life to hear that this is the one time I watched the news. It was so funny. It was like, yes, there are aliens. Now to Trump, blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh my gosh,
By the way,
been
aliens are
kind of
real.
waiting.
Moving on.
Why are we going to Trump? I mean, what are you saying? So, but it's just kind of funny how they're like, we're not going to talk about this. You guys were right, but let's go over here.
That was so funny how they just kind of laid that one on. I mean, science wise, like it's almost statistically impossible for us to be the only life in the universe. It's highly unlikely. But the fact that they,
Yes.
at this they threw it at us at a point where everybody's like exhausted with COVID and climate
Yeah.
change and our political problems, and
Yeah.
they were like, hey, by the way, and everyone was like, you know what, I don't care, I need a nap, leave us, like, sure, aliens, whatever.
I
I think
think
they
they just
announced
put a
that,
mental block. Did the guy really say this? And it's just gone. But hey, there's some
oh,
people
they announced
listening.
it, but
Yeah.
we're all just so, we're
Yep.
like inundated with what's happening on this planet that I think at this
Hmm.
point we're like, yeah, cool, well, moving on.
Yeah. It's like, what's next to talk about and
Yeah.
everything. So, wrapping everything up, you do such a great job being here and letting people know about this. I mean, I really appreciate you coming on to keep hope alive. I mean, this is amazing because it is about hope and how we can teach our young ones to live a good life and be positive and know what the bad things are. I have to call drugs bad things, of course, but the
Yeah,
bad things
they're
in
not,
life.
they're not, kids
They're
using
not.
them is never a good thing.
Yeah.
I thank you for having me. I really,
Oh,
it's such
yes.
an important topic. And I think, for parents to have to try to figure this out on their own, I mean, we've got to make it easy for parents to get what they need. And, that's my goal is to help
Yeah.
parents, really, really lower their child's risk and give their child the tools that they need. And hopefully create a whole generation of advocates out there that are not only keeping themselves safe, but like you said, helping keep their friends safe
Yeah.
and being there
Definitely.
to be like, hey guys, I mean, just one person speaking up and being like, that's not such a great idea. Other kids are like,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Then it's, yeah, kind of like, but where can they find you on social media?
I just said, okay, I have been avoiding getting my picture taken for my entire life, and
Why?
being on social media. No, I don't know. I always have. I'm weird about social media, but I thought, you know what? I guess I got to do this because I want to get the word out there. I want to help people. So I just set up my social media like last week. So they can find
Good.
me on TikTok and Instagram at Love Based Prevention. And that's all just one word, love based prevention.
Okay.
I'm also on Facebook. I have a page for love based prevention. And then just love-based.com is where I have
Okay.
some information. There's some free resources like a risk assessment where you can see all the risk factors and protective factors, and kind of, use that to gauge your child's risk. That being said, just because a child has risk factors and no protective factor doesn't necessarily mean they're going to use substances. Just because a child has no risk factors doesn't necessarily mean they won't. But just statistically speaking, these are the things that raise and lower risk. And so it's nice for parents to have that kind of information so they can do a quick assessment on their own child.
That is really cool. That is cool. So I know I'll be talking to my son about it and everything. So this was very educational. I love this. So I do really quickly want to thank our sponsors for our show too. We have Life on Record, as we talked about. They're at www.lifeonrecord.com. The interactive guest book call. So call them. They have plans that start at $99 for the year. It's really good. PartyTimeTexas.com, your one place to find all your event vendors, from DJs, bands, caterers, venues, photographers, videographers, wedding planners, event planners too, because a little bit different and everything. But come in, look at their website. If you need any help, we're here to help. So that's www.partytimetexas.com. We also have bridalshowsinc.com. Whenever you're getting an event or a wedding, they have the shows to put on. I think they do January, September, and July. So you can stop by and see any of their shows and collect vendor information. We have Miles and Smiles. She's a wonderful lady, DeborahRose.com. And she is an investigator, and she does the fun psychic stuff, the lipstick reading, the hand palm reading and stuff like that. And the best part, she's very accurate. Our next one is Bryce Harney, and Bryce Harney is a wonderful magician. He is traveling around different places. Right now, he's been on many TV spots too for his magic. So Bryce, what is it? BryceMagic.com. So, but other than that, I just wanted to say thank you, and we look forward to seeing you guys on our next show. And thank you so much, Alexandra. I'm losing my voice. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.